Što si radila?
Pa radila sam u kao sestri, da, ali to ti je najviše da si vratila.
Okej. Ti seksom se stavio niže.
Pa sad, 22 godine imaš.
Ne znaš ni sam gdje ti je glavno.
Znači, meni ti je to ostalo, meni je kužiš kao ideš studirat vani i znaš jezici i u biti to ti je kao put neki. I zatekneš se u takvoj situaciji, ne znam, meni je ne sad su prošle godine, imaš svoju karijeru, ali ostalo mi je, valjda ova naša.
Znaš šta, ja ne znam puno ljudi koji rade u Hrvatskoj, ali uglavnom, iako sad je recimo u Švedskoj deputy ambasadora, mislim da će postati ambasadorica i genijalna cura, naša, genijalna.
Pa zato ti kažem, kod nas sve ovisi o tome ko vozi brod. Da krenemo.
Krenuo je prema nama, da zajedeš.
Ajmo prije, mislim sve je okej, tako da nekako.
Dobili su svi.
Znaš, kad on lagano krene, da.
Ali to je cijeli smisao, ovako je kad se sve pošlika. Da vidim kako...
Ali znala.
Nešto drugo. To pa se natrao kao prošla se kroz krize.
Ali znaš šta, nema, pazi, mislim, te emisije na 4 sata uživo, bez ikakvog plana. Znači, meni se dogodi da to ne mene govore, pričaj.
Ali i ja isto zato što vas je super malo. To je ono kad priča s tvojim kolegicama, znaš ono, super malo. Sad ono, cijeli dan proizvodite te programe, onda biš na neke druge televizije, pa čak i na vaše ove bratske.
Ne, gle, ali zašto? Ok, uvijaj, ne trebaš uvijat, sve mi je jasno. Ali onda ti improvizacija postane znaš. Ok. Ma ne, htjela sam ti reći, to je tako da ovo što ali dobro, to ovisi o veleposlanstvu u kojem jesi, ali naravno... A to sam ti htjela reći. Ja sam bila ovo ljeto mjesec dana u Švedskoj. Bila sam još na porodiljnom svugdje. Znači, onda bila sam čak i u onom gradu koji se zove Växjö. Zamisli. Onda te valjda sve jasno.
A imaš nekog tamo?
Ne, samo smo muž i ja i djeca išli kao on the road.
Djeca si vodila sa sobom?
Jednu sam vodila sa sobom. Od godinu dana.
To je najpraktičnije.
To je švedski.
Ne, ja sam to isto počela.
Pohvali me.
I najpraktičnije kad sam mali.
Ali super je, znaš, nije još hodala, sad ima da.
Čekaj da ti ima 10, pa kad...
Imam ja još jednu, 2 imam, vjerovala ili ne, 6.
Meni je, dok su mali nekak ide, sad je već, ja ne bi, neki maram golkofonom.
Da, uglavnom dođe ti za plakat. Mislim, od muke gdje živiš, ja. Sa svim nekim manama.
Ima nade.
Dobro.
Kad bi se što se sad ja vidjela na naša tad si rekao, kad bi njoj dao. Znaš, kad bi se nešto...
A šta je sad otpravljeno?
Ne,
Aha.
Ali dakle, ima genijalnih ljudi naši, samo im treba malo nešto.
Pa ima. Ali recimo, ma dobro, pričat ćemo neki, ali meni je tad, u toj fazi moj života, kakvi su ljudi tamo bili i atmosfera i odnos prema Italiji i sve što smo mi radili, ja sam malo osjećala da se mi igramo državu. Znaš šta je osjećaj? Igramo se državu. Ali dobro, on je još uvijek veleposlanik, znaš? On je još uvijek veleposlanik.
Pa ne bi 20 godina.
Pa je, u Poljskoj. I to nije baš ali dobro.
Ali mislim, baš evo u Švedskoj instituciji, to ide po što se reži mlade, ko će sve treba raditi. I nema tu, nema sada...
Moj tvoj, a moj podijeli. Znam, to je neka... Pa dobro, to tako i treba biti.
Ali mogu neke želje, to zapravo...
To je posao. Znam, to su profesionalni. Pa dobro, to tako i treba biti, a ne ovdje sad ćemo mi sjeti pa ćemo se dogovoriti ili se nećemo dogovoriti. Uglavnom, ova gospođa Madunić, odakle je ona? Kako ti?
Ja su roditelji kao djeca, neovisno jedno od drugom 60 ili 66, koji su iz kapitalacije.
Da.
Dobri vraći se iz
Da.
Kada ona priča, čak i kada se nećeš pričati hrvatski, ona nije presredna da govori hrvatski službenu situaciju.
Razumijem.
Jer kao doma kad pričaš hrvatski, kao naš...
Ma da, razumijem.
Da, super.
Iako sad sam ja s njom bila onom najnormalnijom s
Ali njoj nije ni dobra riječ, ne mogu na to nije ta finesa.
Da. Ali dobro, da. Ali mi ću plus joj sigurno.
Koji nema veze s hrvatskom, to isto
A znači mi smo ti imali, oni su ti imali, ja sam radila tamo ko mali konj radi jezika.
Da, znaš šta je jako teško?
Ali ni ne žele ga. Joj, to je tako bilo ono... Znaš, to...
Ne samo to, nego to mi je dobio na eventu.
To je tako, ali to je ciganjenje, znaš, za male stvari, ne pričamo...
Šta će jedan moment da se upenja, ta žena nije Vidović, nego stavi na stol, kad se skupe i onda da zaposliti.
A to je majka.
Znaš, ona priznala nije...
A ovdje ti je, ali nećete govoriti mene i prošle 100 godina i sad sam ono, ali ovdje ti je tipa zatvorit ću se kući, a službeno sam da dobijem.
Kod nas je sustav ti, znaš, ne moraš...
Lijepa, kad kažeš kod nas.
2 mjeseca.
Ali tu ti, da, ali ima ovdje, to ti je koji jedan televizija. Znaš, mi funkcioniramo u Hrvatskoj, ali gledaj, ti svoju plaću, zarađuješ, brsi, okretan i ne čekaš, ne znam kakvu proceduru da bi...
Znaš kaj, dobra sam sa Ivanom, drugičević i sa Milom.
Pa onda si najbolja sa ljudima s kojima sam i ja dobra. Samo što mene ne puštaju studija, pa ja valjda nigdje ne idem,
Zašto te ne puštaju studija?
Šteta, pokušavam doći, molim te. Idemo.
Evo.
1, 2.
Evo ga.
Evo, na početku bih...
At the very beginning, I would like to welcome you all, wish you a good morning, and a warm welcome to the panel bringing Ukraine closer to the EU. I would just kindly ask you to find your names and take your seats. And as you're taking your seats, I would just like to thank the organizers, representation of the European Commission in Croatia, Embassy of the Kingdom of Sweden in Croatia, as the country presiding over the Council of the European Union, and of course the Embassy of Ukraine in Croatia. And we will also welcome Mr. Ambassador for opening up the space in Croatia 1 year after the beginning of the war in Ukraine on the support provided by the EU and the EU member states. I would also like to welcome all the representatives of the diplomatic corps, partners, representatives of the media, and the rest of the interested audience who have come to this anniversary. And I hope that at the end of the panel discussion, we will have a series of questions given the importance and interest in the topic. I would now just like to invite you up front here to take a family photo. This is important for us. So, kindly come up to the stage for the family photo. I will speak into the microphone so you can hear me better. So please take your positions here on stage so that we can fit all of you in the photo.
Madam in the back with, yes, you, red glasses, I want to see you. I need you to swap with someone taller, please.
So you
No, this is okay. You will be nice in the photo. Just swap the two of you. Then gentleman behind you, and there we go. And the last two gentlemen behind you, you would need to come in front somewhere, and you as well. Yeah, just try to come in front, please. Let me just do one more check. Okay, eyes here, please. And we can take a light smile as well.
That's a nice one.
Okay, just a couple more to be safe. Perfect, thank you.
Thank you.
Hvala.
Evo sad dok se
As you're again taking your seats,
kasnije ću se i naravno pridružiti, pa bih pozdravila
I would like to welcome Her Excellency, the Ambassador of the Kingdom of Sweden in Croatia, Madam Helen Madunić, the Ambassador of Ukraine, His Excellency Vasyl Kyrylych, and Deputy Head of Representation of the European Commission, Andrea Čović Vidović. And I would just like to announce that later on in the panel discussion, we will be joined by Mr. Božo Kovačević, former minister in the Croatian government and ambassador to Moscow from 2003 to 2008. So we will have an opportunity to hear from him as well. Now we are going to start with our discussion. Mr. Kyrylych, good morning and welcome. Thank you for joining us. At the very beginning, what can you tell us about the current situation in the field in Ukraine? Today is the first anniversary. It's been exactly 1 year since the beginning of aggression on your country. You can hear me, I hope. So, dear Madam Ambassador, dear Madam Vidović, if I have not mispronounced your name, dear friends, dear ambassadors, everything is changing and there's no end in sight. I remember the words of the great Ukrainian whose monument has been erected in the Ukrainian street in Zagreb. Truly, this year seems to me like it has just been since yesterday. The 24th of February was 365 days ago, and it seems like it was only yesterday. 365 days Ukrainians have been fighting for their freedom. The enemy was planning to perhaps, within 96 hours, to conquer Ukraine. But what he got was war, which has been going on for 365 days now, and they are not going to win in it. I would not like to go now into some historical aspects, because I appreciate both your time and mine. But in my opinion, there are some facts that need to be reflected on. What has this enemy envisaged? Why, perhaps on the 24th, precisely, he decided to embark on this brutal war against Ukraine? There are no unknowns. There's nothing new here. Everything is historical. It has been over 300 days, or years, or even 400 years, where we see this brutal invasion and war against Ukraine happening. If you remember, the Security Munich Conference of 2007, then one of the speakers, President of Russia, said that he's using the word expansion today. What happened 1 year later? Expansion into Georgia. What did we say this year? We thought about it. We were silent. If you can remember the NATO summit in 2008 in Bucharest, on the margins, Putin said to the US President George Bush, "Come on, George, you should know that there's no such country as Ukraine." Those were all messages. Those were messages of not recognizing a neighboring country. These are some words that have a lot of meaning behind them. These are messages of preparation and of lack of recognition. There's nothing new there. Everything has been confirmed throughout history. On November 1st, 1708, Baturin, the city, Baturin, is 50 kilometers from Kiev as the capital of Ukraine at the time of the Cossack Republic. It's not possible for Ukrainian to have a state because this is not according to the vision of Russians, not just of political elite of Russia, but Russians as such. It was ordered for General Menshikov to go to Baturin, and over 3 days, they slaughtered 15,000 inhabitants of the capital of the then Cossack Republic, the true Ukraine. If you remember, in 1918, there was a young Ukrainian People's Republic. After the Brest Agreement and so on. And it had only begun to breathe, to stand on its feet, to make first steps, but no. In Moscow, they invented for General Muravyov to go with his army again to Ukraine, to Kiev, to destroy, because there's no such country as Ukraine. As a wall to stop this army, they put Ukrainian students, 300 of them. And what is 300 against the whole army? And then 32, 33, the hunger, all of this is a reflection of ideological intention to destroy the foundations of Ukraine, the elite, the intelligentsia, and so on and so forth. What was the objective for this enemy? A, to conquer the territory, to replace the leadership, and then to place their own leadership, which will be conducive to Kremlin. Number two, to expand the geography of the sphere of influence. Number three, to restore the Russian empire and join different countries into the Soviet Union, and then again to envisage a union as to what should have been done, if you remember, before the Soviet Union, like the Warsaw Pact and so on. The thing was that there cannot be a country, a rich country, Ukraine, but rather It should be like an administrative part of this newly developed empire called the Russian Federation. I would not comment now on what the enemy has done, because you all know that. Unfortunately, you know about it. It is all evident. Bucha, Irpin, Borodyanka, Mariupol, Izium. When I think of Mariupol, what I see before my eyes is Vukovar. And there are already so many Vukovars in Ukraine, several dozen, over 20, I think, 23, where they found mass graves. Women, children, elderly people with their hands tied up and so on. What is that? Genocide. What do we need in the 21st century? What kind of operation? What kind of regime? Everything is clear. You don't even need to be educated to see things clearly. It is simply a lack of recognition for Ukrainians as a separate people, as a nation, lack of recognition for Ukraine as a country, as a state. If Ukraine became a member of NATO, this would not have happened. We all of us know that. But we are strong. When you defend your own country, when you defend your own home, your family, your parents, your children and grandchildren, you always win. You cannot lose when you are defending your own. You don't need anyone else's. When you have to defend yourself and your own, you cannot lose. And when you defend yourself, it is complicated. It is difficult. You may lose something, but in these 365 days, we are growing in strength on a daily basis. The international community has become like a union with Ukraine, standing shoulder to shoulder with Ukraine. The European Union, the US, Japan, so many countries, every country of the Western democratic civilization, democratic community which respects freedom, democracy, is standing with Ukraine, because this is not just territory as such. This is about Ukraine, which is defending also civilizational values on which the European Union has been built: democracy, freedom, and so on. I would not now talk about perspective, but I am certain, it's not that I hope, I am certain, and the Ukrainians are certain, our friends all over the world are certain that we are going to defend Ukraine. I would like to thank each of you, dear Diana, dear each of you. You are a very strong diplomatic army. A diplomatic army, diplomatic front from different countries. There are many things not being discussed publicly, and they shouldn't be, but rather we should just work step by step every day. And every day the democratic world and Ukraine are getting stronger. I remember the words written on the central cross of the city cemetery in Zadar. They are Croatia. We owe it to them. They are our defenders. France owes its eternal gratitude to General Charles de Gaulle. America owes its gratitude to Washington. I, as a Ukrainian, owe my gratitude to the Ukrainian defenders. I owe my gratitude to the democratic world, the international community, and I owe my gratitude to Croatia and to each individual Croat. Croatia is not a large country, but this small country has given great support to a large country, Ukraine, and it has done so much. You may ask yourself what it has done, but it does something every day, step by step. I would not now say that we should or must do something. This imperative, we must defend democracy and freedom. I'm sure you remember the great Croat Ivan Gundulić. Oh dear, oh lovely, oh sweet freedom. This is still current. Freedom has a price. Unfortunately, it's also, the price may be life as well. Thank you, dear friends. Thank you, dear organizers. Thank you, dear Diana, Madam Ambassador. Thank each of you from the bottom of my heart, my small heart, a large heart, heart of our defenders, heart of Ukrainian mothers, Ukrainian daughters. We are all so grateful to all of you because we know that without solidarity of the international community, we would not be as strong as we are now in the battlefield. And each day we work on defending democracy and freedom. Glory be to the Ukraine, to our heroes. Long live Croatia. And once again, thank you all, my dear, our dear Ukrainian friends. You are like family to me. Everyone from the US to so many different countries, dear brothers from Poland, from Slovakia, from Austria, France. Every day we see your help. My son sometimes asks me about what is happening in Ukraine, and we talk about it. So thank you so much to all of you. Slava Ukraini. I also want to thank Mr. Ambassador for these really wonderful words. Thank you so much. He himself mentioned the international community, and this is so important in the situation that the Ukraine is. So the question for Madam Čović Vidović. Ukraine has received the candidate status for membership in the EU, and what is the next major milestone in this dynamic? These are very important questions.
Thank you very much. And thank you for gathering in such a large number. And thank you, Mr. Ukrainian Ambassador. We are all here to send a message that we stand with Ukraine. The European Commission also sends this message with its figures and also with granting status of a candidate country to Ukraine. It was in June 2022. And I don't think there is any more symbolic message and stronger message than this one, that Ukraine is part of our collective story, and this is our collective fight. There are many, many things that unfortunately in this war-raging period have made Ukraine come closer to the European Union. And I think that we will all become more aware of two parallel processes, the war-related process and the process that brings Ukraine closer to the European Union. We've started with liberalization of tariff, that is trade with Ukraine, the status that Ukraine will gain by June 2023, the European Commission will insist on extending these terms. That's extremely important for Ukraine. Also, the grid connection. This was very important when the energy infrastructure was destroyed on the ground. So these are the details that may seem as details to us, but they are lifeline to Ukrainian people on the ground. So day after day, I would say that Ukraine, with its own pace, is getting closer to its firm status with the European Union. I would say that these are two parallel processes. In this case, Ukraine's accession to the European Union and our idea that can be and is implemented every day on the ground shows that these are two parallel processes. The rehabilitation of Ukraine and strengthening of its democratic and administrative capacities to bring Ukraine closer to the European Union. So these processes are really implemented and carried on in parallel all the time. And the European Commission is here to extend its hand in each and every step of this way. Here we also have with us the Kingdom of Sweden. One question for you, Madam Ambassador Madunić. Your country is presiding over the Council of the European Union. One of the priorities is providing economic and military support. Why the support to Ukraine is one of the most important priorities for Sweden right now? I would say, okay, it's working. So it's not only important for Sweden. Currently, we are the presiding country, but this is an important question for all of us. Why? Because, first of all, we all know that this unjustified Russia's attack against Ukraine and violation of international law, violation of the UN statute, and also the violation of the agreements, the treaties, the ongoing treaties regarding security in Europe. So for all of us, for Europe, I would say, and for the world at large, it is very important to fight against this. And we will never agree with what has happened. And on the other hand, what did happen is the most horrible thing regarding stability and security in Europe ever since the Second World War. Croatia is well aware, because some of you have suffered the war atrocities. You know what it means, and it was horrible. Currently, we are in a situation that we are all sharing this situation in Europe. None of us is safe. So this war is also a question of our collective fight. We have to fight for democracy, for freedom, peace, and stability in Europe. That's why I would say that this is important not only for Sweden, but also for the European Union, all our European countries and non-EU countries, and also for the countries of the democratic world. Today with us, we also have our new colleague and new colleagues from other countries that are not within Europe or within the European Union, but I think this is important for all of us, for democratic world at large. Thank you very much for your answer. I would just like to check whether you need to leave us to go to the Parliament, because we know that today is anniversary and we suppose that you have a very busy schedule. Well, you know, this word anniversary is very difficult for me. I have my obligation from my heart, from my soul, from my mind as an Ukrainian, and then also as an ambassador. The Ukrainian embassy was visited by the Prime Minister, Andrea at 9 o'clock, as well as Tomo Medved with the delegation. And we've remembered the victims and observed a minute of silence for all those killed in this brutal war against Ukraine. And we've also touched upon the issues important for Ukraine and the international community. At 11 o'clock, I have another meeting with the Speaker of the Croatian Parliament. There is a group of children of defenders having a short break in Croatia. And for me, it's important that these children hear the spokesperson of the parliament of the country that has suffered a similar story, that knows what it means to defend one's own country. I am sorry, but I really should leave you, and I do thank you from the bottom of my heart. Thank you very much once again, and good luck. Thank you once again, Mr. Ambassador, for his words. And definitely, we know that being at the Parliament today is very important. I would like to invite Mr. Kovačević to join us. I did already announce him. He will join us in the panel. Thank you very much. I would like to ask another question to Madam Ambassador, just to wrap up this topic. In which way does Sweden directly help Ukraine? You did say that this is our collective effort, our joint effort, but given the role of your country at the moment, it has also additional meaning. On the one hand, yes, but I wouldn't like to put it that way. We all support Ukraine in a way in which we possibly can. Since the first day of the war until now, Sweden has supported Ukraine with 1.3 billion, especially in terms of humanitarian aid, economic aid to the government and the Ukrainian system. And of course, the military supplies. This is for the first time since the World War II that we've supported somebody like this militarily. And of course, in the 90s, since the 90s, we've supported Ukraine for the development of democratic systems, human rights, and the media. So this has just kept on. And I would like to say that all countries in the European Union, we support Ukraine as much as we can, and collectively also from the side of the European Union, economically. I think for all of us, it's important to stand together with Ukraine and to help as much as we can. If possible, each and every country should do this, and we should stand together regarding sanctions against Russia. In no way are we going to accept this to be continued in this way by Russia? Thank you very much. Madam Čović Vidović, Croatia has also shown its continuous support and sensibility towards Ukraine. And, of course, given the experience Croatia has regarding peaceful integration, brings Croatia closer to Ukraine. But what about the military aid and collaboration with NATO? The Mr. Ambassador has rightly stressed the importance of alliance with important organizations, because in such times we need to be together. We'll have to share the microphone, but thank you very much for this question. Definitely, this is one of the crucial questions this time. On behalf of the European Commission, I would like to remind you that the military aid is in the hands of EU member states. We are just facilitating and encouraging this type of assistance, this type of relief. I would like to say that there are many bright examples, like Estonia. 1% of GDP has been allocated for its support to Ukraine. There are also other initiatives like EUMED mission for Ukraine, 2-year mission. It's not an obligation for EU member states, but concerns training of Ukrainian military forces in this horrible aggression that's been raging for a year. You did mention NATO. It's also very important to highlight to what extent NATO and the European Union have again intensified their collaboration. On the 10th of January, a new declaration has been signed, including different types of defense against manipulations and protection of our collective infrastructure. So many messages show that the European Union is standing with Ukraine. There are many figures. I would like to read them out all, but you did ask me more specifically. So about 12 billion euro have been allocated by EU member states for military aid to Ukraine. And this is an unprecedented figure. I would also like to say that the European Commission has also utilized another facility of peace facility for another 4 billion euro in military assistance for Ukraine. Unfortunately, the war has to be won on the ground, but the European Commission is sending a message that we are standing with Ukraine until the very end of the war. Thank you very much. Of course, we cannot discuss everything that's happening without touching upon Russia from different aspects. We will also have a discussion on Sweden, but I would just like to say that Sweden also helps and supports non-governmental sector, which is very important and commendable. Of course, this is just a broader aspect of all these events that are going on. Mr. Kovacevic, what about you? What about this impact on the Western Balkan countries? You will agree, Madam Čović, Vidović, that the Western Balkan countries are very important for the stability of the territory where we are and also for the European Union as such. What can you tell us? The answer is very simple. The Russian impact is very dangerous, especially after the invasion against Ukraine has become even more intense because the war started in 2014, the war in Ukraine. But after this more intensive aggression against Ukraine, the efforts of Russian diplomacy have been more enhanced. And this all has been focused on increasing tension in the Balkans. The idea is that the so-called frozen conflicts or unresolved issues be used in order to achieve Russian interests. It has been very clear until now that the vital Russian interest is to disable integration of Western Balkan countries, first of all with the NATO, but also with the European Union. After the invasion against Ukraine, Russia actually started threatening by escalation of tension in the Western Balkans, which in turn might result in a war. Many times we were able to hear from Russian ambassadors in different countries that if this and this country decides to join NATO, that Russia will defend its own interests. Well, in what way will Russia defend its interest in the Balkans and what these interests are? I did already alluded to this general interest, which is to disable any further integration in this part of Europe. Why? I think that this is only revenge, and it is an expression of frustration because of Russian foreign policy failure. The Russian president has set unrealistic foreign policy objectives which are unacceptable, like the renovation of the empire, and he is trying to achieve them forcibly because diplomatically it's not possible. In the Balkans currently, we have two focal points, which are Kosovo and Bosnia and Herzegovina. In terms of Kosovo, we know that the Russian diplomacy insists on Kosovo being a part of Serbia, and that without consent of Serbia, Kosovo can never be recognized as an independent country. At the same time, Russia annexed Crimea. What does it mean? Russia believes that the West has usurped the power by allowing Kosovo to become an independent country. And Russia believes if the West could do it, then we could do it as well. And this is one of, how to put it, key misconceptions of the Russian Federation. First of all, they are completely ignoring the Kosovo issue historically, and also they're ignoring the fact that the Russian Empire is to be extended by force. On the other hand, conditionally speaking, the U.S. empire is the empire by call, by request, because none of the Western European countries was forced to join NATO in 1949. None of the countries of Eastern Europe was forced to join NATO, but all the countries willingly wanted to do so. Despite the U.S. efforts in the first years after the collapse of the USSR, that NATO would not be extended. We know that the U.S. Defense Secretary Perry was against expansion of NATO, but these countries did want to join NATO. And this is the main difference that the Russian political elite does not recognize. The fact that the NATO is expanded to them means that Russia could expand as well. But NATO is expanded in accordance with the previous decision of every potential candidate country to join NATO, whereas in Russian case, it concerns military conquest. So we have these two focal points in the Balkans, Kosovo, unresolved issue, unfortunately, until now. But in my opinion, the European Union and the US 10 years ago should have put on the agenda this proposal for normalization of relations between Serbia and Kosovo. And had they done it in time, this crisis today would potentially be less dangerous than it really is. And in terms of Bosnia and Herzegovina, also, I think that a lack of coordinated efforts between the European Union and the US has left Bosnia and Herzegovina with an unresolved status of Republika Srpska for too long time. Obviously, the Russian Federation wishes to use Republika Srpska for destabilization of Bosnia and Herzegovina. And in terms of interests of the European Union and the US, there was another problem. Until last year, the Security Council, the UN Security Council, has always adopted the statement, the report of High Representatives, as well as confirmed and verified this person's appointment. But this year, we cannot expect that Russia, as a permanent member of Council of Security, would agree with the High Representative's report, not recognized by Russia as such High Representative. So I don't see the way how this issue could be resolved in any other way but by coordinated efforts by the collective West through the Council for Peace Implementation, which means that the Security Council will no longer be a crucial framework for further resolution to Bosnia and Herzegovinian issue, which in turn implies really a coordinated and persistent, unwavering efforts of the US and the European Union, because the primary interest of the European Union is to resolve these two crises in Kosovo and Bosnia and Herzegovina as soon as possible. Thank you very much. Two more questions, and then I would like to ask you, members of the audience, to join us with your questions. I hope you do have them. The first question for Madam Čović Vidović. When we speak of the European Union, recently, the 10th sanction package against Russian Federation was issued. So what is the assessment of the European Commission regarding the efficiency of the previous 9 packages of sanctions? You did say that this is a war which also includes the monetary aspect.
Yes, Absolutely. This is another dimension through which the European Commission and the European Union strive to make this raging and aggression in Ukraine to stop. This is the 10th package of sanctions, which was presented on the 15th of February, and the estimates are that it should, forgive me for using this vocabulary, but do damage of almost 11 billion euro for Russia. So the sanctions are targeting individuals, about 1,400 persons on the list being sanctioned. I'm talking about people from oligarchs to all of those people connected with the political system in Russia. And also there are target banking in financial structures of the Russian Federation. In the energy sector, the prohibition is almost 90% when talking about the import of Russian oil. And what I would also like to highlight in all of this is solidarity on the EU level. The first package of sanctions, and now we are already talking about the 10th one. So the first package was approved on 25th of February 2022, so just one day after the escalation of the conflict, which means that it was confirmed by the Council and all of the member states. It is very important not to stop sending the message of solidarity in our support to Ukraine, and how important these sanctions are, and how, because of these sanctions, which are so continuous and united, it is really damages the Russian machinery and weakens it in this war. Yes, so the war is waged, of course, on several levels. This is also the machinery of information, of course, and this hybrid war that is being waged. We don't have time to cover all of the aspects of this conflict and of this aggression, because we need to call the things by their name. So questions for the end for Madam Ambassador. As I've said before, I think it is very important, because it's in all of our interests in due time for Russia to be a democratic country with different democratic institutions. And Sweden is precisely support to this non-government sector and the opposition, because the other day I saw, as I believe is all of you, about the Veterans Day being celebrated. It seems that all of the voices who differ from the president have become silent. Yes, unfortunately, in early this year, we found out over the media that the Helsinki group in Moscow had to close down. That's one of those non-governmental organizations in Russia, which has been there for the longest time, advocating for democracy and human rights in Russia. I think that really this was a sign that we have come to a situation where all of the differing voices, those that do not agree with President Putin and his politics, they are no longer heard in Moscow or in Russia. This is very disheartening and very sad. Sooner or later, we are going to have to reach the end of the war in some sort of agreement. So that's why I believe it is important to see what we may have done differently in the early 1990s. And now we have to learn our lesson for the future, that once we find ourselves in a similar situation, we'll have to advocate more and better for democratic development in Russia as well. Unfortunately, currently, we are not in a favorable situation in that regard, and who knows when we will be, but at least we need to discuss it and think about it. Yes, thank you very much, and thank you for this part of the panel to all of our panelists. Questions from the audience. I hope that all of this has encouraged you to ask your own questions. Do we have any? Okay, we have a lady in the back. Just hold on for the microphone, please. So I see nobody wants to speak up, but actually I would like to hear about the following. My name is Tuga Neral, and I attend a course in the Open University taught by Professor Božo Kovačević. And I would primarily like to ask a question for him, but others can join in as well. Namely, whenever we speak about Russia after Putin, military analysts or analysts in general always have a pessimistic response. it might be even worse. Why don't we perhaps have a more optimistic stance? And what are the arguments for us to think that it could get even worse than this? Thank you. Most simply put, in Russia, it has been prevented for political opposition to act legally. Whoever is in the political public is a supporter of President Putin, and some are even supporters of even more rigid nationalism, even more rigid Russian imperialism and anti-Ukrainian chauvinism. But it is highly likely that once further military failures come along, there will be cracks within this Russian political elite. In a way, there already have been some. If you've listened carefully to the speech of President Putin, he told the Russian public that they don't need to regret the assets of oligarchs blocked in the Western countries. What does this mean? It means that he feels he no longer has unwavering support by those Russian oligarchs, but even more importantly, this is actually an invitation to Russian citizens to support him. I think that this reservation of his with regards to oligarchs and trying to butter up the Russian citizens by saying what he did, it is actually his recognition and acknowledgement that the possibility of continued war in Ukraine depends on the consent of the citizens of the Russian Federation to continue financing this adventure of his and to be killed themselves in this war. I hope that this conclusion of mine is not too far-reaching and that it is not unfounded, but in this tone of Putin's speech, I think it may be actually connected to the appearance of discordance within the Russian security and political elite, and that now there's nothing left for him to do but rather to gain support for the war, because this war does not kill just Ukrainians but also kills Russians. So he's trying to seek support from his citizens. Before, he had tacit support for all foreign policy adventures, but the key was that the price of those adventures is not paid for primarily by the middle class in Russia. And just the fact that he has pronounced a special military operation and not war, he has basically announced that he wants to wage war, but that he wants this to be without any internal political repercussions for Russia. The fact is that when he announced mobilization, he had to admit defeat, and there will be more mobilizations as well, because he obviously wants to continue the war. And whether those who succeed him will be better or worse, well, it's difficult to say, but it seems to me that the only way for this war to end, or rather that there are two ways for the war to end, either for some sort of a conspiracy within the Russian political elite, which will dethrone Putin, remove him from power, or the second way is a military defeat in such a way that he cannot present his defeat as victory, because even his previous defeats he has presented to the Russian public as a victory. So it has to be such a convincing defeat that Putin cannot show it in any way as victory to his supporters and followers. Thank you very much. Are there any other questions? The floor is yours. Good morning to you all. Czech ambassador, I don't have a question, perhaps just a comment. But the fact that we don't have a question does not mean that we are not here. We are here to support Ukraine. And of course, the question was, why was it important for Sweden? Madam Ambassador said not just for Sweden, it's important for all of us in the European Union and in the entire democratic world. And of course, this struggle of Ukraine and this fight of Ukraine for freedom and independence is also our fight. So why do we provide this great help to Ukraine? As I've said, we ambassadors have come here to say to our dear friend Vasyl from Ukraine that we are here to stand with Ukraine. Thank you. Thank you for these words. I would just suggest for panelists to provide some final remarks at the end of this panel. Madam Ambassador, perhaps we could start with you, just to perhaps summarize and send a message. Well, I just want to thank all of you for coming here in such a large number, because I do agree with a colleague from the Czech Republic that we really have come here to be for solidarity with Ukraine. This is going to be important in the future as well. I think we're all aware that I'm not an expert in Putin or in Russia, but we're all clear that in a way it is expected by him that we are going to give up, and that sooner or later we are not going to stand behind and with Ukraine anymore. And I think that it will be very important for all of us to continue in doing so, to continue with our support, not just today, but in the future as well, to the extent needed. Yes, thank you very much for this. Mr. Kovacevic, do you have any final words? Well, of course, we all prefer peace rather than war. It seems to me that President Putin has made such decisions that have actually completely ruled out the possibility of resolving the problem in diplomatic ways. And he has created a situation where the previously clear Ukrainian victory is precondition for any clear peace. Thank you very much. On behalf of the European Commission, I would like to send a very similar, identical message. Solidarity, for which we are all here today, is manifested in concentric circles on the whole EU level. I don't remember ever being in an event where absolutely everyone agrees on the final words and messages they want to send. On behalf of the European Commission, my message is that we are not giving up on our support to Ukraine, and we're also not giving up on solidarity or on our look into the future and into the aftermath of the war, because this is something that we also need to think about. We need to think about a restored, stable, democratically strengthened Ukraine. European Commission is here both symbolically and very tangibly to help Ukraine. We have already invested over 15 billion euro to end this war as soon as possible, and this will continue to be so. The aggression has to stop, and European Commission is working with all its might on that. I want to use this opportunity once again for coming. The Czech ambassador really summed up the things very well. You've said that what we all think, that just by coming here, you are showing great support. And at the end of this panel, and once this anniversary ends, they are perhaps here to think about these things additionally, but we will keep thinking about it every day for as long as it goes on. Every day is an opportunity to talk, not just among diplomats, but also in the media, in the public space, because, of course, this is something that is important for all of us. Freedom is not just important for a particular country. So once again, thank you for coming and, of course, for taking part. Thank you.